Loading the preview. And go live. All right, we're live. Hello, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, everybody.
Gotta do my old VJ voice. Hey, everybody.
What's a V? Oh, the MTV thing?
MTV thing. They had this weird tone to them, and they said words weird. I don't know what it was. I think it was more just Adam Curry. He set the tone for everybody else on MTV.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so let's see. Are we all set? You got the show notes, sir?
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna drop the show notes in chat. There's your show notes, everybody.
There's your show notes, everybody.
See, I don't remember that. Like, I remember watching MTV and stuff, but I do not remember. You know who I remember? Who was the guy that did the news?
Oh, don't remember. I rarely watched MTV. We didn't get MTV here in Canada, except if you had a satellite dish. So only one of my friends had a satellite dish, so we'd watch Beavis and Butthead and all that stuff on his satellite dish, and that's pretty much it.
All right. So let's shut off the music and switch this over and push that button.
And a Coleco game cartridge by November 15th. We'll send you a free Cabbage Patch Kid by Christmas.
And turn that up. And I think we've done everything we need to do, and it's time to get started. Before we get going, guys, I see that we've got a bunch of people here. If you all could do us a huge favor, and if you could all click that like button in 3, 2, 1, go. We get a like spike. It'll really help us out. You guys are fantastic. All right. Let's see. Stadiacast show notes, episode 22. All right. Are you ready, sir?
Yes, I'm as ready as I'll ever be.
All right. Here we go. Hey everyone, welcome back to Stadiacast. This is episode 22. I'm Bill. That's Lloyd. What's going on, Lloyd? You're muted.
I'm muted. That's what's going on. Not much, dude. Just getting ready to talk some Stadia. Watching all of the stuff at Gamescom was exhausting to me, and I can't imagine being there and actually interacting with that many people. But I think we got some great news to talk about.
We definitely did. It was exhausting for you. I had to, because I wanted to get the quotes from the videos. So I watched those videos probably 16 times so I could get the wording right. Because I would back up and then I would type what they said, and I would back up and type what they said over and over and over to get these quotes. But yeah, that's right. We got Gamescom to talk about. But before we talk about that stuff, just want to let everybody know that we record this show live every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern over at youtube.com/Stadiacast. And I hate to start off this way, but I just lied to you, because next weekend we're not going to be recording Stadiacast. I am going to be at Dragon Con talking about digital media, content creation, stuff like that. And if you're going to be in the Atlanta, Georgia area and you're going to Dragon Con and you want to meet up with me or go to one of the panels that I'm going to be on, make sure that you head on over to runjumpstomp.com/DragonCon. And, if you see me there, make sure you come over, give me a high five. It'd be wonderful to meet you. So that's the reason that we're not going to have an episode next week. And then the week after that, Lloyd is going to be indisposed at 10 a.m. Eastern. So we'll let you know when we're going to record that show. We're not sure if it's going to be later in the day on Sunday, because he's going to have like 1 billion people in his house, and it's just going to be too crazy for him to record. So we will let you guys know when we're going to record. It will either be later that day on Sunday or maybe Monday night or something like that.
Right.
Maybe not Monday night. I don't know, because I have Taekwondo that night, so I'm not sure. But anyway,
We'll sort it out.
Rest assured, outside of not getting an episode next weekend, we will find some way to bring you guys all the Stadia news, and that's what we do here at Stadiacast. if you want to directly support the show, you can do so by heading on over to anchor.fm/Stadiacast. And then there's a button there that says support this podcast. And if you click that button for as little as $1, you can help Lloyd and I create more episodes of Stadiacast. Lloyd, are you ready to talk about Gamescom?
I am, sir. Like I said, a lot of news coming out of it, so it's going to be fun.
All right. So what was your big takeaway from Stadia in Gamescom?
My big take was all of the big all the major news websites and like fan sites saying, oh my god, Stadia doesn't suck, which seems to have been kind of the tone for the longest time. It's like, this is never going to work, it's going to be terrible, it's going to be laggy. And it seems like every interview from IGN, from just some different YouTube videos that I follow, everyone's like, it works amazingly well. I played Doom with other people at one of the biggest, or the biggest, games festival in the world, and there was almost no lag. And I don't believe how they did this.
Yeah.
And that came from multiple areas, which kind of made me smile a little bit, because if it performs well there, it's going to perform well in many other instances, like your living room.
Exactly. That's the thing that you have to keep in mind is Gamescom, and anytime you go to a big convention like this, it is generally the worst possible environment to test something that depends on the internet. My best example would be if you go back to the unveiling of FaceTime on Apple. Steve Jobs is up there on the screen, or up there on the stage, and he's like, he's trying to do FaceTime with somebody backstage or whatever, and it's not working. And he's like, did you guys turn off your Wi-Fi? Did you turn off that? We need you to turn that stuff off for this to work. There's too many signals. And it was like a really big embarrassment for them. And I highly doubt that Stadia was using Wi-Fi at Gamescom. But for it still to be working there, it obviously it seems like they must have it nailed. And we've got a couple of things that people had sent in. So let's take a look at this first one. This isn't this is not an interview, but it's more of a couple of people from IGN were standing there, and they were talking about Doom, and they kind of got sidetracked and ended up talking about Stadia. And I found some quotes from Destin Legary. Hopefully I said that right. And he said, like, the overall for this is that he was skeptical, but then once he played it, he was like really impressed. And so first off, I've got a bunch of quotes. We'll take each quote one at a time, and then Lloyd and I can talk about it. So his first quote, he's talking about Doom, and he says, having played it on PC, I was really curious. I had been really cynical about Stadia. I mean, their streams can't even stop lagging, you know? So I try it out, and I think it sold me on Google Stadia. It stuttered a little bit on a cutscene, but that was about it. The flow of combat still felt really good on the controller. So what do you think about that, Lloyd?
I think that's fantastic. And I mean, if you're going to get stuttering from cutscenes, that's probably not even related to the network. That could just be a little blip with the video playback from that cutscene. I think that's great. I mean, Doom, there isn't a faster first-person shooter than Doom. You're moving constantly, you're shooting constantly, you're jumping, you're dodging. There's fire coming from all angles, and that's why it always kind of amazed me that this was kind of the game that they keep showing off about Stadia. It just means that they're really sure and really proud of what they've developed here. And for someone that's been a skeptic to be really excited, I think that says really good things about the service. And I mean, it was in the worst possible location for them to be playing this, and it worked well. So I'm feeling pretty confident that I'll be able to get a decent FPS without too much lag here in my house.
And well, just to be fair, to do the other side of that argument. In Lloyd's house, it's going to be fantastic. In my house, it's going to be fantastic. But there are going to be some people whose houses just don't have the internet or the bandwidth available that is needed for Stadia. So we understand that. And when people bring that up to me, and that happens a lot of people say, well, what do you think about this? Where, I don't have fast enough internet. My answer to them is simply, then Stadia is not for you yet.
Sure.
Eventually you will have fast internet, but right now it's not for you. And that's okay. Not everything has to be for everybody. You know,
Sure.
I talk to a lot of people about, people get upset about, oh my God, I can't believe that this company is making this game. I don't like this game. Well, okay, then don't buy it. That game's for somebody else. It's not for you. So
Yeah.
he went on to talk about Mortal Kombat. I think it's really, you mentioned confidence, Lloyd. I think it really shows confidence from Google that these are the two games that they were heavily depending on at Gamescom. Doom, is it Eternal or Inferno? Eternal.
Eternal, yeah.
Yeah. So Doom Eternal and Mortal Kombat 11. These are two incredibly fast-paced games where it is very, very important that you get the latency right. And for Google to go to the worst possible environment with two games that would have got to be one of the most difficult games to get right on a streaming environment and to nail it with both, that's really impressive. So Destin Legary was talking, and he said it seems to be talking about Mortal Kombat. He said it seems to be playing pretty well. I didn't get hands-on with it, but I was watching other people play, and they were executing their moves, and they didn't seem to be impacted by any sort of lag that a 60 FPS fighting game would encounter. You know what else is exciting to me about this? For a game like Mortal Kombat, is the idea that okay, Lloyd, have you played Super Smash Brothers Online?
I've played something. I don't know if it was really playing Super Smash Brothers Online. It was laggy and things were jumping around, but yeah, I have. It wasn't good.
So basically, the problem with Smash is a lot of people will say it's got bad netcode. Maybe, but it also has a problem where when you are playing that game, if one person in your group that's playing, maybe you're playing 1v1, or maybe you're playing 8 people on the screen. If one of those people has a bad internet connection, it slows everybody's game down, and it's a really bad experience. Now, it doesn't happen to me always, but it does happen every once in a while, and it's very frustrating. For a fighting game like Mortal Kombat, that won't happen on Stadia. And maybe I'm wrong about this, but the way that I look at it is the upload is just sending little tiny bits of information, right? The download, which is where most people will run into the problem with Stadia, is what sends your video back. So if, let's pretend that Lloyd has terrible internet and he and I are playing Mortal Kombat. I'm of course playing as the T-800 and he's playing some lame character. But
Ash from Evil Dead. Come on, that's not a lame character.
Wait, he's in the game?
I think that was one of the leaked DLC characters that's going to be coming out.
Oh, okay. Well, I think that turned out to be Arnold Schwarzenegger from Terminator.
I think, well, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, so he's playing some character. I'm playing, it doesn't matter. So we're fighting each other, and he has a bad internet connection. What's going to happen is his game will start to look pixelated, but will probably still run smooth. My game will stay smooth the whole time because I have good internet. So somebody else that you're playing against, they're going to be the only ones that experience a problem because everything is happening on the same network. All of the multiplayer stuff is happening on the same network. So there's less waiting around for stuff to happen. And I think that is going to be a huge change. And for me, I may end up getting, I'm typically not a fighting game guy. I may end up getting a fighting game on Stadia just so I can test this out, because I think that it's possible that it might be the best environment to play a fighting game, especially if people are reporting that the latency is just not an issue. What do you think, Lloyd?
Sure. Yeah. First, I'm going to go back to your previous point about, well, it's going to work for us. It might not work for everybody because of the lack of internet. You reminded me of a conversation I was having with a buddy at work, and he's like, it's going to be terrible, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, why? He's like, well, some people have ADSL and they have like 15 megabit down. And I was like, well, then they can't play it well, or they can play it 720p. The service doesn't suck because not everybody can get to it. And he says, like, I disagree with you. And I was like, there's parts of Winnipeg that don't get cable TV. There's parts of the province that don't get cable TV. There's huge parts in this continent that can't get cable TV. That doesn't mean that cable TV is a failure and sucks. It just means that that is what's available in your location. And he's like, well, yeah, I guess you're right. And he kind of came to my thinking a little bit that you can create a service that doesn't service everybody, and it doesn't mean the service is bad. It just means that not everybody can access it. And then back to Mortal Kombat, when you're talking about the how having everything in the cloud is actually going to be better. That is entirely true, because not a lot of video games that sell right now use private servers for multiplayer. So what that means is that either you or someone else that you're playing against, they're the server. So their system is doing all the heavy lifting, figuring out where they are, figuring out where the internet player is, and trying to make it fair. Well, all that's going to be done in the cloud in Stadia. There's no more. The problem with Nintendo is they have terrible matchmaking. They have terrible server code. They have terrible everything, because the internet is so new to them, where Microsoft and Sony have been doing it for a long time. So they're a little bit better there. If all that stuff is just pushed into the cloud, and you have your game running on a Stadia Blade, you have a server running on a Stadia Blade that's servicing the two people that are on a Stadia Blade, and there's very low latency between those two nodes, your internet online play is going to be fantastic, because not one or other of the players are going to be the hosts. Well, technically, I guess they would be, but it's all in the Stadia infrastructure. It's not going to be their home and then have to deal with any sort of latency and problems in their they're like nodes in the neighborhood where there's someone that's downloading a bunch of torrents and it's ruining it for everybody. You don't have to worry about all that stuff. It's all going to happen in Google's network infrastructure. And that's going to make gameplay smoother from a multiplayer standpoint. And it's also going to mean that game developers can, they don't have to be so crazy about their netcode, because there's going to be very low latency, even if one Stadia node is in North America and the other one is in Europe, because it is all going to be controlled, and they can do quality of service on all that traffic from Google's network standpoint. So they don't have to worry about the standard internet out there causing them problems. They're dealing with a really controlled network, which hopefully over time is going to make things better.
A lot of times, the problem with the internet is the last mile. If you've never heard that term before, the last mile refers to how it the internet out there is incredibly fast until it gets to the wire that goes from the pole to your house, and then it's slow. So getting rid of that last mile problem is very, very important. And I think that Stadia and, xCloud or any other streaming services, this is going to be the end of that last mile problem when it comes to multiplayer games, where somebody can ruin it for everybody else because they have crappy internet. There's been so many times that I've gone to play a game and everybody's lagged out because whoever got chosen to be the server has terrible internet, and now everybody's experience is awful. And then in some of those games, you can't even quit out because it's a multiplayer game, and quitting out in a multiplayer game will penalize you because you're in effect ruining everybody else's experience by quitting out. So, a lot of multiplayer games will say, oh, you can't play for the next half hour because you quit out of a multiplayer experience, which is totally a great idea. I like that they do that. Totally. But when you get into a match and it is a slideshow and a lag fest, it's just not fun. And, because everything is so slow and laggy, the match takes even longer. So now you're almost like trapped in this, misery that you just can't get around. It's very, very frustrating. So,
totally.
Exactly. Go ahead.
And it's also going to get rid of you could be playing against Bobby on the internet, and Bobby has the best internet. He has like one gigabit fiber both ways in his house, but Bobby has the router that came with his service, and Bobby thought he was smart, and he bought an Eero, and he set the Eero up that is now that is now sitting in his house connected to the base station that his service gave him. So now Bobby has double NAT, and that is not going to work really well for online play. And you have all these like weird you have people that you're playing against that they're using power line networking, and there's just all this crazy stuff that everybody has in their house. Well, that's gone now. Who cares? That is all sitting in the Google network. All those problems are going to go away for game developers. They can make their code run perfect on the Google network. And then all you have to do is worry about your download speed being fast enough to bring down that 1080p 60 or whatever. You don't have to worry about all the Bobbies of the world that have all this stuff. And I'm not talking about Bobby, the Nintendo guru. He's an awesome Bobby.
Hey, he's
and
awesome.
All Bobbies are actually
We're
awesome.
talking about, damn it, Bobby. That
That's
kid
right.
from whatever that show was. What was that show?
Yeah. King of the Hill.
King of the Hill. There you go. Damn it, Bobby.
Yeah.
I love that guy. So, you know, and there's going to be people who hear this argument, and their response is going to be, well, then Bobby's going to have a terrible experience. Right. But Bobby isn't going to cause a terrible experience for everyone else, which is what happens now. So
That's right.
There's a lot of different ways that we can look at this. Let's move on and look at a third quote from Destin. He is talking about xCloud now. So they were kind of having a conversation back and forth. And he said, I actually got to play Halo at E3 on xCloud. And I don't think that xCloud was as smooth. There was a lot of hitching. There was a lot of delay, actually. They have a controller connected to a screen, basically, and that was how you were playing a lot of the xCloud stuff. It seems like they have a little bit more work to do compared to Google Stadia platform, which, again, really, really impressed me. I think it might, surprisingly, and I can't believe I'm saying this, I thought there's no way Google Stadia is going to be this functional, and I tried it out, and oh my God, this thing might be good. So that was the quote from Destin. He was incredibly skeptical and cynical about the idea that Google Stadia would work, and they seem to have sold it on to him just based on the fact that he got to try it. And whether or not it's better or worse than xCloud, I don't care. I want xCloud to do well. I want Stadia to do well, because that means that we will have competition in multiple stores.
Yep.
And the thing about, actually, you know, this might be a good topic for another episode, Lloyd. And let me just run this past you real quick. There's a lot of people out there who are always talking about how important it is that Stadia have exclusives. And the more that I think about it, I do think Stadia will have exclusive. We already know of a couple. But the more I think about it, the more that I think that it doesn't matter nearly as much. And I think that we want to talk about that next episode. Does that work for you?
Yeah, I dropped it in the chat, so we have it recorded for posterity.
Excellent. All right. So let's see where we are. Let's take a quick break. We're going to hear from a sponsor. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Stadia interface just a little bit. Stick around, guys.
Color? Introducing Game Gear from Sega. The full-color portable video game system that separates the men from the boys. Game Gear from Sega.
All right, we are back from our sponsored break, and so many people sent this to me. Like it was a lot of people kept sending this to me. But somebody misbehaved. Somebody was naughty. You were not supposed to take pictures of the screen at the Google Stadia booth, and I dare say you're probably not supposed to hit that Stadia button either, but somebody hit that Stadia button and it brought up the friends list, and then they took a picture. Like, this person was really gutsy. So I'm going to bring this up on the screen right now. Now, it's pretty sad that this is something that we're all excited about. You know, that's like, oh my God, we get to see part of the UI, and it is just it is so boring, and I don't care, but
Right.
we have to report on it, and so many people were excited about this. So Lloyd, what was your reaction when you saw this picture?
I thought I was looking at Xbox for a second there because of the way that the little blades slide in, and they have like the wacky names if you just sign up for an Xbox Live account. This one is 23 #5821 or 23 pound 5821. I say hashtag because that's what my kids say.
I say Octothorpe.
Octothorpe. There you go. I shake my head at my kids all the time. but it looks clean. It looks like what I hoped it would. I've seen other interfaces from Google that are less clean, so I wasn't 100% sure it was going to be this way. But this looks really, really nice. It's simple to the point, and that's what you really want out of it. I'd love to see what more of the interface looks like, but this little tiny snapshot makes me happy, and it makes me think that the rest of the UI is going to be exactly what I want from Google Stadia.
Yeah, I don't really care about this picture nearly as much because it's showing us something that I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but this is kind of hard to get wrong.
It's a list. Like, that's
an empty list at that.
Exactly. So, I mean, maybe if there's actual friends online, it's like really ugly with like spinning flaming skulls and like 1990s GeoCities. I don't think so, but it makes me think that the rest of the interface is going to be this clean.
Now, the thing that I will point out is that over here on the left-hand top corner, it says your network great. So it's going to tell you how good your network connection is. And I think that that's really good so that when you're playing, if you're having, if things are looking like crap and you hit that button and it says your network, and then, it says, I don't know, like shitty or something like that, then you know, oh man, there's a problem with me. And then you're probably not going to be complaining about how Stadia, well, let's be honest. People are still going to complain about, they're going to blame it on Stadia, even though it's because they have really, really slow internet. But go ahead, Lloyd.
Tenno Manajek, I want to say is how it's
Techno
pronounced.
Magic.
Tech. There's no C there. I don't know. Magic. I don't.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
Techno Manajek, whatever your name is. Thanks for sending the note in. They say that apparently founders won't have that #1267 in their name. If you're a founder, you're just going to have your name there, which might be a cool little perk for people to jump on the founder bandwagon.
Yes, and they did say in the Stadia Connect that they're almost sold out in some countries of founders packs, which is just their way, a positive spin on saying we're not sold out in any countries. So I don't know. I felt like that was really. I hate to use the common parlance of today, but I felt like that was really thirsty.
Yeah.
Saying that.
Please, sir, may I have some more founders orders?
Although I do think that they've probably sold a lot of them. I just think that was, Google just doesn't understand how to talk to people yet. Tenno Maniac is in Maniac in Serbian language. There you go. Well, thank you for the information. All right, you want to talk about this this next quote, Lloyd?
Sure. So there was a great video that was posted by IGN with Max Scoville, Brian Altano, Tina Amini, and they were interviewing John Justice, which is the best name ever.
Oh my
for
God.
superhero.
Is that guy a superhero? I hope so.
He's got to be, right? He's the VP of product at Google. And his quote as to why they picked Doom Eternal and MK11 is because they are hard games to get right. So Google's coming out of their corner, they're swinging, they're throwing like huge uppercuts, saying that we can do this right. And to prove it, here's the hardest games that are currently coming into the market, and we're going to do them right because we're Google.
Yeah, they did. So first off, they were asked, do you have developers that were skeptical of this? And they said, yes, absolutely. We had developers that were skeptical, and then we let them try it. And here's the quote from superhero John Justice, and that's how I will be referring to him from now on. He said, before people could try it and see it, people wondered about it. There are things that we can do to speed it up, where we run it to make it fast, or in some cases faster than buying a console. He was saying, look, people are skeptical that this is going to work, but what we've done is we've figured it out. We finally have nailed it down, and we were absolutely able to make it so it just feels like you're playing on a console. And I hear a lot of people, not a lot of people. I've heard some people who said that they've tried it and they've said, "Oh, I could feel a little latency, but I didn't really like it didn't affect my gameplay. And I almost wonder if that's a placebo effect. Like they're expecting
Yeah.
to feel latency. So they think that they're feeling latency, but they always come away and say it felt fine. Like it didn't affect my gameplay at all. So do you, I don't know how I feel about this quote. He said faster than you can with a console. Do you think that that's possible yet, Lloyd?
Um, yeah, in some instances for sure, depending on the game. A little bit of latency. Like we early on in the show, we talked about how just turning on your console, connecting it to a TV, there is whatever it was, 30, we'll say 30 milliseconds. I
I
can't
think it
remember the
was
exact
80
number.
something for an
Maybe
Xbox.
80. Yeah. So like if you can have close to that by streaming online, for sure it's going to feel like a console. The sending your controls to the cloud is going to be simple. Everybody's internet can do that. And that is really what the limiting factor here is for how your game looks. Because if Google is doing what they do with YouTube when you're playing a game, they're just going to keep crunching that video down to lower and lower bit rates to have it look less good, but still be functional. And if they can get that algorithm working right to figure out when to do those drops, and you have decent internet to send your control inputs back to the cloud, I think you can have close to that for latency, and most games will behave okay.
You know, in fact, they talked a little bit about bandwidth, and you know, Google is very aware that people are worried about this bandwidth thing. And the quote is that he said, it's the last quote in here, but I guess we're going out of order because it makes sense to talk about it here. He said, when we did Project Stream, that took 25 megabits per second to get what we had. That was a year ago. Now we can do the same quality in 15 megabits per second, or sometimes even down to 10 megabits per second. So
Yeah.
it's not just that internet speeds are getting faster and faster. It's also that their compression that YouTube or that Google is doing is getting better and better compression, so they can send the same data in smaller pieces, which is something I think a lot of people struggle with because they think of the physical world and they think, okay, I can fit this many cartons of milk in this box. And then Google's like, well, I can fit 12 in that box that you can only fit 3 in. And they're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Like people struggle with that because they don't know about like, and I'm not going to pretend for a second that I understand it, but people just don't understand about compression. And the people at Google, they're figuring out how this compression stuff works, and it's pretty impressive that they're able to almost half the amount of bandwidth needed in 1 year. Just 1 year. That's bananas to me.
Do you know how they can do that, Bill?
By removing the space between the atoms, like Ant-Man? I don't know.
They have a billion lifetimes worth of video content that's been uploaded to them, so they can just run their algorithms against all this video content that they have sitting on their servers right now. We've been giving them the all the test cases that they need to figure out the best compression, and I think that's what they're doing. They're taking all these videos and they're running different compression algorithms against it. So they're probably compressing different parts of the screen different amounts, and not compressing like the corners, because that's where all of your UI is, and that doesn't change as often. And yeah, they're probably just running tests after tests after tests. There's a lot of like really uber math nerds that are just like smiling ear to ear with all this compression stuff that they're able to work on.
And you know what? There's another example of when Google has done this in the past. And I think I may have talked about it on the show before, but I'm not positive. But I remember a very long time ago, I was walking towards a Walmart. We had parked in the parking lot. I was walking towards the Walmart, and I wanted to know something. I wanted to know the phone number for something. And of course, this is back in the days of flip phones, right? So we didn't have a smartphone where I could look something up. And so I opened up my phone and I hit 1 1-800-GOOG 411, and I called Google, and a robot answered the phone and said, what do you want? And I said whatever it is that I was looking for, and it did a little like doot 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 sound, and then it said, okay, here's the phone number, and I hung up. Right, what Google was doing there, and they've done this before, this is brilliant, is that they get customers to give them just information so that they can use that information to learn how to do something new. In that case, they were learning, how can we get a robot to understand what a person wants? How can we get a machine to listen to my voice and figure out exactly what the person wants? And if there's anybody that's good at that, it's Google. I have Siri on my phone. I had Amazon devices in my house. I got rid of them for the Google devices because the Google Assistant is 1,000 times better. You can ask it to do something, and 99 times out of 100, it will nail it. And my Amazon was struggling with some of the things that I would ask it to do. And oh my God, Siri is a train wreck because they just don't have that voice stuff down. They haven't got the AI that Google has. And so, just like you were saying, where Google takes all of this video that people are constantly uploading and uses that as a way to compress, maybe that's why Google's Stadia is working better than Microsoft's xCloud, because Microsoft just doesn't have that same wealth of knowledge that they've had over a long period of time of running YouTube. So I think that that's definitely a big deal, and it's a feather in Stadia's cap that Microsoft is currently lacking. And you know what really excites me most is this idea of whatever it is that we're going to be giving, whatever information that they are going to be getting from us playing games, and how they can use that to make something else that's even cooler down the road. Like AI learning how to best make a game experience for us based on how we play. So that's a really good point, Lloyd.
Nice.
Okay, we got another quote. Another quote from superhero John Justice. I'm sorry, superhero John Justice. There we go. On the possibilities with cloud. So he's talking about what can we do that can't happen on other platforms, basically, is what the question was put to him. He said, we're constantly upgrading our servers. We're constantly upgrading our servers. He said that twice, or I typed it twice. I'm not sure. Right now, our machines are faster than anything you can buy in a console by a pretty good chunk. But we're already working on the next and the next and the next as we constantly upgrade. And that's something that you can't do in a home console environment. I can't go out, buy an Xbox, bring it home, and then have it upgraded at no cost to me the next day. So, last week, you and I were talking about how you had gone out and you bought an Xbox, right? And I was like, I would never buy a system this close to the end of a console cycle. And that's the reason why, because I know that there's an upgrade coming, and I don't want to spend money on this only to have the upgrade come out right afterwards, because then I'll feel like, oh, I kind of got, I made a bad decision or a bad purchasing decision. But that's going to be a thing of the past with Stadia, because you're not buying a console. You're just buying a game on their system. And if they're continually upgrading the hardware behind the scenes, which seems like that's what he said that they're doing, superhero John Justice said that that's what's happening. I think that, in 2 years, we're going to be looking at very different hardware than we are now. And that's because Google knows that this is going to be a very lucrative store for them. And, there's always people who they keep saying, what happens when Google shuts it down like they shut everything else down? They don't shut things down that make money. They shut down side projects that cost money. This is going to make them money because they're going to take 30%. I hope they take less. I hope it's 12% like the Epic Games Store, because I would like to see that change in the favor of developers. But they're going to take 30% on every single game sold on that store. And that is going to, and and there's no buy-in ahead of time. You don't have to buy in ahead of time if you wait until 2020. Lloyd, what do you think about this quote?
I think it's the reason why cloud gaming is ultimately the future that we're going to be living in. As much as people like having these little things behind them and physical copies and consoles underneath their TV, you're just Nintendo selling you a Switch can't compete with Google constantly upgrading the servers that are running your game. From a technology standpoint, of course, Nintendo games are amazing, and I'm always going to buy Nintendo games, and I'll own every Nintendo console that Nintendo ever comes out with. But if you're playing a game and it looks amazing today, and then Google can just make a little change on their server, and the developers can go, "Oh, we can add, I don't know, ray tracing now," and then they issue a patch. All of a sudden, your game that you bought on day one, a year or 2 years later, all of a sudden is now ray traced. That isn't going to happen on any other console that you own. Everyone was super excited about Microsoft taking old Xbox One, the first Xbox, not Xbox One, the current Xbox One, because Microsoft is confusing, taking those games and then bringing them over to Xbox One and then making them look better with updated textures. It's the same game. It's just an updated engine running at 1080p. And everyone's like, oh my God, this is the future. Well, no, the future is not ever having to have a console in your house, and developers able to do the same thing just by Google upgrading their back end. So I don't know. It's super exciting for the future. A little Xbox One update. I was talking about last week how I was downloading Gears 4 and it was like forever and it took forever. The version on my Xbox One X or my Xbox One was almost double the size. So I got to double my downloads to display on my Xbox and on my PC to see which one looked better, because apparently I don't have data caps, so I can download 200 gigs of a game that I'm only going to play for a few minutes.
So, I'm going to take a quick aside to talk about an experience that I had. And I'm going to talk about this extensively on the next episode of Switchcraft. So if you haven't subscribed to that, make sure that you go over to anchor.fm/NSC for Nintendo Switchcraft, or just go to runjumpstomp.com and you can find it there. I replaced my Nintendo Switch with a new Nintendo Switch. And I don't know if you know this, Lloyd, but at the end, they erase your SD card when you transfer your stuff. When you put your SD card into another Switch, they're like, okay, now it's time to erase this, even though that's where all my games are. And so I have had to re-download all of those games. And I have over 200 games on my Nintendo Switch because I get a lot of review copies. I have over 200 games on my Nintendo Switch. And I started the download last night around, I don't know, like 7 o'clock or maybe 8 o'clock at night. And it was probably 7 o'clock at night. And I figured, okay, it'll be done by morning. Nope. Still going. No. It's still going. In fact, it's going right now. It's still downloading all of the games that I had on there, which is just bananas. With Stadia, that wouldn't be the case. I would buy a controller, come home, hit a button, boop, there you go. I'm playing.
All your stuff is there.
Your stuff is there.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I wish I would have talked to you before you did this, because what you can do is actually back up your SD card to your computer. And then do the transfer, put your SD card into your new system. It formats it with it basically encrypts it to that new hardware. You take that SD card, put it in your computer, and you just copy all the stuff to it from your computer, and then you get all your games on it without having to re-download them. I'm sorry, Bill.
Lloyd,
if I would have known you're
how
buying
did
a
you
Switch,
not know that I
you.
was going to do this ahead of time and anticipate this and call me and tell me?
My predictive algorithms are failing me, Bill.
Well, we'll wait until they upgrade your hardware.
Exactly.
Listen, you brought up a good point about the stuff that's behind us. And they said, how does, on collecting and digital libraries, they were asked about that. And Mr. Superhero, John Justice, said, it's pretty much the same as everything digital today, except you don't have to wait for downloads and updates. It's just faster and better. And I agree with him. And I know that there's a lot of people that don't want to hear that because they want to collect everything. And I understand that. If you look behind Lloyd and I, clearly we are collectors. If you're not watching the video version of this, just imagine that we've got a lot of cool stuff behind us. Clearly we are collectors. And you're just going to have to not collect anymore. And I know that that's upsetting to people. And if that's upsetting enough to you that you don't want to use Stadia, then don't use Stadia. It's not for
Exactly.
you. But guess what? Everything's going to go this way eventually. Nintendo will, Microsoft will, Sony will. Everybody will eventually be on cloud gaming because it's going to be easier and better for both developers and end users. This was very important to me. In fact, Sony has ticked me off to no end this console generation with their nonsense about fighting against crossplay, which is a very anti-consumer move from them. And I said this on the show before, maybe not on this show, but on one of my shows, that's going to be a question that needs to be asked of every platform holder when they announce whatever it is. The first question needs to be, are you going to support cross-platform on this platform? And for Google, the answer is yes. They said, and we already knew that, but they were reiterating here, the developers are usually pretty excited about cross-platform. We think that it's a core of next gen. We just don't think we should have the kind of walls that we've had in the past. We want every single title to have cross-play and cross-progression. So that's awesome, and I think it's huge, and I'm sure that we're still going to... Look, there's going to be games that don't have it. That's on the developer. That's not on Google. However, it might not be on the developer. It might be on Sony, because Sony won't allow them to play with anybody else. And I think that in the end, it's going to bite Sony in the rear end. And it's a reason I'm considering not getting a PS5 next console cycle. I may end up going Xbox for my local console. You got anything to add to this?
No, I mean, I'm just telling the people in the chat room that I used to have bookshelves filled with VHS tapes. I'm a collector. I have the collector bug. Like if I open a box, when I was a kid, I'd open a box of cereal and it's like one of 4 toys. It's like, can we buy more Frosted Flakes? I want to get the other 3 toys because I only have one of the 4. I've been a collector my whole entire life. And I used to have bookshelves filled with VHS tapes, and then DVD was the better format. So I started replacing all my favorite movies with DVDs, and I had bookshelves filled with DVDs and VHS tapes and boxes in storage. And then Blu-ray came out. It's like, well, I'm going to start doing this again because Blu-ray looks so much better. And I bought maybe only 30 Blu-rays. And you know what? This is insane, is what I told myself. And I ripped all my DVDs to a network attached storage device I have here. And every new movie that I've bought in the last, 12 years since my kids were born, essentially, I've bought digitally, and I haven't looked back. I don't have bookshelves filled with movies. I now have bookshelves filled with books, which is what should be on the bookshelves. And I've made that move 100% for video. I've made that move 100% for music. I don't buy CDs anymore. And I've been resisting doing that for games because I love having box stuff, because I love games. I love the look of video games. I love the look of video game culture. I love posters. I love clothes. I love hats. I love everything to do with video games. I could still do that. I can do that with retro games like I have been doing. And I can also buy modern geekery that is about the games that I'm playing without actually having to have a box sitting on a shelf behind me. I can still do that collecting just without box art. And I'm starting to come to that point, and I'm okay with it. I'm starting to feel better about it. But that's a move that I'm willing to make. And I'm one of the biggest collectors out there. Not that I have the biggest collection, but I collect everything. When I touch something, I want to collect all the other stuff in that set. Mm-hmm. And I'm willing to make that move because of convenience. And that's what a lot of people are going to do. There's people that don't have a TV, that don't have DVDs, that don't have music. They have a phone and they have a Netflix subscription. If they can not have a console under their TV, they're going to jump at that as well. I mean, it's just the way that we're moving as a society.
This reminds me of a comment that we got on a previous YouTube video. So I just brought this up. It's from SGD. They said, downloading games have one major factor that you guys are ignoring: native gameplay, not being dependent on a third party. Several, if we're being honest, like Google or your ISP. Why are you not discussing this? Well, here's why. First off, we have discussed it in the past before on previous episodes. But what I will say to this is the amount of times You know, because I'm like Lloyd. I have stopped buying movies in a box, and I just watch them. I buy them on iTunes or whatever they call it now, Apple Movies or something. So I buy a movie on there and I watch it, and it's very convenient because I can watch it on my iPad while I'm on my bike or whatever. And the number of times that I have sat down to watch a movie and not been able to because my internet was out has been zero. That's never happened. It's never happened that I've not been able to do that. The only time that that kind of thing would happen is when the power's out. And guess what? I can't watch anything anyway. So this whole idea that you are dependent on a third party, guess what? When you have a console, you're dependent on a third party. Your power, the electricity that comes to your house. If the power goes out, then you can't play your games. I guess that you shouldn't buy an Xbox then. And I know I'm being a little salty, but I see so many people throwing this out there when really it's not really a problem. Name the last time that you in your house went to watch a YouTube video and it wouldn't work. And if the answer is zero, then Stadia is going to work fine for you. And if the answer is higher than zero, then you either need to get a new ISP, which is tough in the US. I will admit that. Or you just need to say, well, Stadia is not for me. I'm going to stick with Xbox. And, and that's fine. I'm not going to deride somebody for not using Stadia, but I don't understand why everybody who doesn't want to use Stadia has to go on to anybody who says anything good about Stadia and just trash them. It's kind of irritating and a little immature. Not that this guy was being immature. He was having a measured conversation about it. But there's so many people out there that are being very immature about it.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead.
I have a perfect solution for these people. So the first thing you do is you go into your podcast aggregator, whatever podcatcher you use on your device, and you subscribe to Nintendo Pulse and Nintendo Switchcraft. And myself on my podcast, Bill on his podcast, we're going to talk about all the best Nintendo games. Then you go and you pick yourself up a Nintendo Switch, which runs even when your power is out in your house, which is fantastic. It'll run. The power goes out, you pick it up, you play it. You have that as your side console to play games when Stadia is down. And there's amazing stuff that will only ever be available on the Switch that you can play. And then you get Stadia for all your big AAA games that you'd be playing on your Xbox, PlayStation, PC. And it's the best of both worlds. Maybe you can't play Cyberpunk 2077 when your power's out, but you couldn't if you had a console either. So I don't see that as a problem. That's just the way that internet's going. Like, you can't make a phone call if the cell network's down. Doesn't mean that cells are terrible. And I mean, it's just the way things are. So pick up a Switch, subscribe to our podcast, find out which games to play, and you'll have a backup game system just in case Google Stadia goes down because of your internet.
Absolutely wonderful plug there, Lloyd. Great job. Can you read this quote about the controller while I bring up the video?
Sure. So they were asked about the Stadia controller, and they were talking a bit about it. And Brian Altano, who he's a big guy at IGN, and he loves new things, but he also has some measured responses. And they're talking about the Stadia controller, and he's like, I really like the face buttons, that they feel nice and soft. The D-pad is clicky. The sticks are really smooth. The shoulder buttons are great. I am completely sold on this controller. And your controller is kind of your tactile interface between you and the game, and if the controller doesn't feel right, you're not going to have a good time. For someone that plays as many games as Brian Altano, he plays all consoles, to like the Stadia controller, it means that I'm not going to have any issues with it, and I'm actually excited to get one in the mail.
Me too. I'm very excited about this. The thing that they were saying about the Stadia controller that superhero John Justice was saying he said, we've spent years on this. Years. We have had hundreds of prototypes of the Stadia controller. He says, when you feel something like on the D-pad, the collapse on the dome switches, it's really hard to get that just right and let you roll combos, but he says that he thinks that they did it. And it feels like Brian Altano, who I think Lloyd underestimated how many games Brian Altano plays, because he is famous for playing everything.
Yeah.
he says if he says he's completely sold on the controller, then this thing must be a fantastic controller. And trust me, by looking at a picture of the D-pad, I have my doubts. But if Brian Altano says that it's good, then it's probably a really, really good controller, because that guy knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, he plays a lot of stuff.
He does. All right, we are already approaching the end of the hour. We've got one question from crowd play. I was going to say that we could take questions from the live show, but you and I talked for too long, so we're going to have to make sure that we save some time next episode, which will not be next weekend. It will be the week after, for questions from the live show. But we did get a question from Anthony Talcott. They asked this for actually like 2 episodes ago, and I haven't been able to get to it. But he says, question for the cast. We all know how Google likes gathering data. Would you be willing to have Google gather? Oh my God, I can't read. Would you be willing to have Google share your gaming habits, likes, and dislikes with gaming companies? Also, would you like to see a quick optional questionnaire about the game you just played? All right, so for the first question, quick yes or no answer, Lloyd.
I have no problem with that.
All right, that was not a yes or no answer, but it was quick. And I agree. I have no problem with them sharing my likes and dislikes with gaming companies, because guess what? That means that gaming companies might end up making games that I like more often. So I'm fine with that. That's just like the same thing with when they show you, like when the companies go out there and they show you an ad for something that they know that you like because of cookies or whatever. I'm like, yeah, I don't care. I'd rather them show me an ad for, Mario Kart than an ad for, I don't know, something that I don't care about. So I think that that's fine. The second question, how would you like to see a quick optional questionnaire about the game you just played? I'm totally fine with that. In fact, if Google's smart, they will incentivize it. Remember Nintendo used to have a program where you could do a questionnaire, and then they would give you some space points, and then you could use those space points to buy cheap games, right?
Yeah, cheap games or physical items and things like that. Yeah, every game that you played on Nintendo, I think it was 2 weeks after you downloaded it, you'd get a little questionnaire that you'd have to fill out. Or after 2 weeks after you put the code in or downloaded it, because they did it for physical and digital. And I enjoyed it. I gave a lot of thoughts on the games I was playing. I hope that information went back to developers and it didn't just go into the virtual trash pile in Nintendo's offices. If we could do something like that on Google and maybe get some space bucks, and we could save up our space bucks and buy a game set in space, that would be fantastic in the future.
So thank you very much for the question, Anthony. If you want to get a hold of us, you can follow the show on Twitter at Stadiacast. You can follow me at Run Jump Stomp, and you can follow Lloyd at Dasme. That's Dasme. I hate that I have to spell yours every time, but we will continue to do that. Be sure to use the hashtag Stadiacast so that we can find your tweets. We've got, Discord is an amazing communications platform, and you should join our Discord channels. You could join my Discord, which has a Stadiacast channel in it, over at runjumpstomp.com/Discord. And while you're already joining Discords, Lloyd has his community Discord over at rezd.tv/Discord. That's rezd.tv/Discord. He's turning me into a Canadian. The music that you are about to hear is Subterranean Kamikaze by Zircon. Check out their stuff over at zirconstudios.bandcamp.com. Lloyd, you, sir, are awesome. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Bill. It is a pleasure as always.
Bye-bye! All right, we're back with a vengeance.
We are back, sir. That was a fun one.
It was, but we didn't get to any. You know what? We can do a post show if you want to go through chat real quick and answer questions that people had.
Sure. Let's scroll back a little bit.
Mule Spud says, "I wonder if MK11 on Stadia has the 60 frames per second cutscenes. Why would the cutscenes be any different frames per second? frame rate than anything else. Do you have any ideas?
I don't know. Are they 30? Let's see. MK11 cutscene FPS. Maybe they're only 30 on. No, 60 frames. Oh no, there's a mod to get 60 frames per second in cutscenes. I guess they're only 30 frames per second on the game, which is really weird.
Why in the hell would they do that?
Cutscenes and Fatal Blows are locked to 30 frames a second. That is so weird.
I can understand Fatal Blows because maybe there's like a lot of stuff on this, like particles on the screen that you have to keep track of. But for cutscenes, like that's just pre-rendered footage.
No, it's in-game stuff.
Okay. See, you say cutscene, I assume pre-rendered footage.
Yeah, no, it's all in-game stuff, but I think you're getting closer, like close-ups of the characters when they're talking. So maybe there's a lot more data there, and they just couldn't get it running really well.
That's a good question, Mule Spud. Thank you for the question. That one makes a lot of sense. Let's see. Willem Millard says, "Good feeling that this will bring Chromebook into the mainstream crowd." I think it already is in the mainstream crowd. Do you think that this is going to sell a lot of Chromebooks, Lloyd?
I think it will give people more stuff to do with the Chromebooks they're already buying for their kids for school. I think there's a lot of options for cheap laptops out there, and yeah, Chromebooks are definitely one of those solutions. I regularly see them sold for $299 or $199 or $299 for a really decent one. So yeah, if I'm looking for one for my kids and they can use it for Stadia in the future, I mean that's a nice selling point that they have there, since you can't really do a lot of other things with a Chromebook other than web browsing.
You know what I think it will do? It will change which Chromebooks sell. I think that right now people go for, like the cheapest possible model of a Chromebook. But what I think would end up happening is more people will prioritize screen size over other things with a Chromebook, because that means, I've got a Chromebook on the other side of the room here, and I'm definitely going to be using that thing because or for Stadia, because it's just going to work so well, and it's got a big screen. The screen on it is almost as big as my iPad, and if my iPad, like if they have iOS support like soon, then I won't use my Chromebook as much because this has a much nicer screen. But up until that, I'm going to be using my Chromebook all the time. Let's see.
We have a question from Chase. I'm not going to even type it. I was just going to type it in, but we're doing a post show.
Yeah.
Lloyd, I currently have my Wi-Fi cut off at my router and have a Google Wi-Fi point hooked up to the router. Excuse me, because it gives a better signal. You mentioned double NAT before. Do you think I'll have issues? I don't think you'll have any issues with Stadia, but currently with other games where you're acting as the server, there can be issues with other people connecting to you to get data, depending on how the game is handling their network code. So you'd probably see issues every once in a while with certain games, but with Stadia, all that stuff is happening in the cloud, so it doesn't really matter how many routers you're behind. Really, if you can get an internet connection, you should be fine to play Google Stadia games through your current setup.
Tenomaniac says, "Please start referring to your timings in more time zones." No, I'm not going to do that. I will give you my time zone and maybe Lloyd's time zone, and you can just go to convert your time zone, because I could sit here and list off a bunch of time zones, and that would just eat up time. So I'm not going to be doing that. But thank you for the feedback. It's
time zones are hard.
Time zones are hard. It sucks. Let's see. What else? The reason they had to hardwire is because everyone was on the Gamescom Wi-Fi. Well, yeah. I'm not saying that. That's a good point. I'm not saying that Stadia is going to be bad if you're on Wi-Fi. I'm sure it'll be fine. Most Wi-Fi is pretty damn fast these days. So, for instance, I've got a TV in the bedroom across the hall, and we've got an Apple TV hooked up to it. Actually, we have stopped using our Apple TV, and we've been using a Chromecast because we can just yell at our Google bot and say pause or whatever, and I don't have to look for the remote. Like that's 4K, and when I turn it on, It's like instantaneous. And that one's on Wi-Fi because when we built our upstairs here, I made sure that the streaming studio had Ethernet. I did not make sure that the bedroom had Ethernet, and I do regret that, but it hasn't really impacted me at all.
Yeah, I that's one thing I want to do or wanted to do when I first bought this house was put Ethernet everywhere, and I never did. I didn't want to pull cable and all that stuff. It is a big pain in the butt. But yeah, it'd be nice if I had Ethernet in every part of my house. But most things are Wi-Fi, and they work fine.
That's right. They do work fine for most things. And if I'm watching 4K video on my TV in the other room, then I bet you I can watch play 4K games on the TV in the other room. I don't really care about 4K, but I'll be able to. Chase Forth says talk has also been Bill and Lloyd that xCloud on mobile will only support 720p initially. That might be because of the bandwidth, the internet providers. They're probably going to say, well, you can only do this much speed unless you partner because of not having net neutrality. So that could have something to do with it. And I wouldn't be surprised. Honestly, if you're playing on a screen this small, 720p is going to be fine. In my opinion, 720p will be fine on a screen that small. You're not holding it this close to your face. I just don't see that being a real issue myself, either for Xbox or Stadia. Anything else you want to grab?
So for devices that max out at say 30, 40 megabits per second, is that the same if they're hardwired? Because I was gonna hardwire my TV and I think my Wi-Fi cap is like 60. Yeah. So basically what you're doing is if you hardwire your TV, you're basically getting rid of any sort of Wi-Fi issues. So if you have a lot of neighbors and they're using the same channels as you can get interference, which will cut down your Wi-Fi speed. Hardwired is always the best. If you can't, Wi-Fi will work, especially if you have a modern router that will change channels and do beamforming to basically point the antenna right at your device without actually having to move the antenna. It uses math to do it. That will work, but hardwired is always the best. It allows you to use the full speed of your internet connection.
William Mallard says, I'd love it if they offered collectible items with special purchases. That would be awesome. Like, I would like to be able to go into a GameStop. I would like to be able to go into a GameStop and go up on the shelf and buy. In fact, this is something that I said that Nintendo should do with Amiibo. Buy a thing that comes with a download code for a game. So I could go there. Let's say I want the Doom Guy statue. I could buy the Doom Guy statue, bring it home, put that on the shelf, and then take the code and put it in, and that gives me my Stadia thing. So that is something that I think that game publishers, they want to see GameStop die in a fire. Like, that's what they want. So that, right. I don't know that kind of thing is going to happen, but we have seen things like that in the past. Like when Sega released Sonic Mania, you could buy this awesome Sonic Mania statue it was a statue of Sonic standing on top of a Sega Genesis, and when you hit the reset button, it did the Sega thing. So like you could buy that, and it came with a digital code for that game as well. And I think that would be an awesome way to do that, to get rid of to keep, how do I want to say this? I still want local places to be able to sell video games or video game related stuff. And that's going to die if they don't have a way to do that, in my opinion. What do you think of that, Lloyd?
Yeah. I think it's a necessary evil to have a place for people to go and buy things. Necessary evil for the games developers, but they don't really like trade-ins. They don't like all the other things that go along with it. And yeah, eventually, well, you look at what's happening over the last little bit to GameStop, and it's probably going to be sooner rather than later that maybe there won't even be a GameStop. They'll go the way of Blockbuster, which is kind of sad. But I'd love to be able to go in and get a deluxe edition that comes with a map for whatever game I'm getting, or Cyberpunk to come with something,
An
dog
arm.
tags or something, an entire arm that I
Keanu
can
Reeves'
replace
arm.
my own, cut my arm off, put that fake arm on, and it'll be great.
Right.
But yeah, like things like dog tags or whatever, like some collectible thing, and just get a code for the game, and then you can get the box copy and do all that stuff for the collectors. I think that would be a great thing. Pretty unlikely because everybody complains when they buy a box copy and it just has a code in it.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
And I've complained about it too. Like I've complained about it, but the more I think about it, the more I think that that's good for publishers. Not only that, but then you can't trade in your game. So that cuts down on trade-ins. And I know that there's going to be people who are like, Bill, you're against trading in games? Not really. But when I go to GameStop and I buy a used game, the publisher the people who made that game get $0 from me. Right. So like that's a bad thing for the industry. I will still take advantage of that and buy a used game from time to time, but that is a bad thing for the industry as a whole. And all it does is throw money into GameStop's coffers, which, they need it right now if they want to continue. Random Noob says, just imagine if Stadia was to offer a free weekend for some games like you get on console where you don't need to download it. Yeah, I absolutely anticipate that coming. In fact, I think that superhero John Justice said that that's one of the things that they can do is like betas and alphas and stuff. They can say, all right, everybody, you guys can play this game right now. Nobody has to download anything. You just sit down, you play it, and then they're like, okay, we're shutting it off now so that the developers get the data that they need so that they can make their game better.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. Like, and the thing that was really cool during the dev talk is that a developer can have multiple versions of their game playable, so different build qualities. So you could have early alpha and all the way up to the release, just so they can check for bugs or whatever. They could also do that for us. They could say, well, if you want to play the game that had this
World
feature,
of Warcraft.
well, World of Warcraft, here you go, here's that early version, and then whoever wants to can play the latest version. I don't see many games in the market right now where that would be a good thing or even usable, but in the future, who knows what kind of features that is going to give, or what kind of I don't know, development time and developers working on it saying, hey, well, we could just create this game and then not add any special features, so it's a special deathmatch mode, and then we can just keep iterating on the new one and add all this new stuff, and if people don't like it, they can just play the original version. Like Fortnite, you could play on the original map. Obviously that wouldn't work, but because of the way Fortnite does their servers, but something like that where it's like, okay, if you like the original, boom, there you go, but if you want to play the latest and greatest, boom, here you go. And it's just two separate links on YouTube that would allow you to get to those. I think stuff like that, we don't really have that option currently with game consoles without downloading a second copy of a game. Now it's just as simple as clicking a link or choosing a game from your menu in the secret interface we haven't seen yet.
Yeah. Terza Reactor in chat says, someone on Reddit mentioned that because iOS does not support the VP9 codec, that's a reason no iOS Stadia version. While that's true, iOS does not currently support the VP9 codec. I do not see a future where Stadia is not running on pretty much every phone out there. It's just too big of a... Go ahead.
They do YouTube and everything else on iOS, and they just use H.264, so they would do the same thing for Stadia. It just might be maybe a little bit laggier or something because the stream is a little bit of a beefier stream.
Yeah, it is a little bit of a beefier stream, but again, if you are able to watch YouTube and not have any problems on your iOS device, then you can probably play Stadia because that's not using the VP9 codec. So I don't see that as being a problem, although I think it would be better if iOS made sure to support the VP9 codec. And I just got a notification that somebody is here and I have to go. So Lloyd, thanks for hanging out. Do you want to try and do, well, you know what? I'll ask you this question after the call. I don't want to put you on the spot. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us.
Take it easy, everybody.
Bye.